There's a moment that shows up at some point with every coaching client I have. A guy will be sharing something hard, something that's been weighing on him, or something his wife said, and before he even finishes the story, he pauses. He looks down, he takes a breath, and then he asks the question he's really been carrying the whole time. Should I bring this up with her? It always lands the same way. It's quiet, it's heavy, like he already knows the answer, but he's hoping I'll give him a different one. And I get it, because what he's really asking isn't whether the topic matters, it's whether he can handle whatever happens once the words leave his mouth. He's afraid she'll get upset. He's afraid it'll turn to a fight. He's afraid he'll say it wrong. He's afraid that the last bit of peace that they have will disappear. And underneath all of that, he's afraid of feeling alone in the moment where he finally says what needs to be said. Most men don't stay silent because the issue isn't important. They stay silent because they don't trust themselves to say it in a way that brings the two of them closer instead of pushing them further apart. Avoidance feels safe until it doesn't, until the quiet resentment starts building, until the little things you've been holding in start changing how you look at her and how she looks at you, until you're both tiptoeing around something you've actually never talked about. That's what we're diving into today. How to bring something up without starting a fight. How to say the thing you're scared to say. How to open a hard moment in a way that actually creates connection. And how to lead with clarity, steadiness, and courage, even when your voice is shaking a little on the inside. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why bringing something up feels so risky, what actually makes hard conversations blow up so quickly, and how to set the conditions for safety before you ever say a word. You'll learn simple ways to start the conversation without coming in hot, and what to do in the middle of it when you feel yourself starting to shut down or get reactive so you can stay present, tell the truth, and move toward her instead of away from her. And I'll tell you this now, the conversation you're avoiding might be the very thing that brings the two of you closer again. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Welcome to Better Husband, the podcast that helps you answer the question, how can I be a better husband? I'm Angelo Santiago, a men's marriage and relationship coach, and every week I bring you practical insights to help you strengthen your marriage and become the best husband you can be. Before a man ever brings something up to his wife, there's usually a stretch of time where he's holding it by himself. Not because he wants to, but because he doesn't know what to do with it yet. Something she said landed wrong, or something happened between them that didn't sit well, and there's a pattern he's noticed that he can't ignore anymore. And he's turning it over in his mind, trying to figure out whether speaking up is even the right move. Inside that moment, he's pulled in two directions. There's a part of him that knows he needs to say something. He feels the weight of it. He feels how it's affecting him. He feels the subtle shift in their connection. And then there's the other part of him. The part trying to talk him out of it, the part that tells him it's not worth it, the part that tries to protect him from the discomfort, the part that says, just let it go, it'll pass. And so he sits with this back and forth. He tries to predict how she'll respond. He worries about choosing the wrong moment. He imagines the conversation going sideways and thinks, I don't want to make anything worse. And in that place, silence feels easier. It feels like the safer move. It feels like holding the peace is better than risking a fight. But avoiding something important doesn't actually protect the peace. It just pushes the tension somewhere else, where it starts shaping things in ways he didn't intend. Maybe he becomes a little less patient. Maybe he withdraws a bit. Maybe he starts rehearsing responses in his head instead of actually being present with her. The thing he's holding onto begins to influence how he shows up, even if he hasn't said a word about it. And that's usually when he reaches out to me. Sometimes he'll bring it to a coaching call. Other times he'll message me privately. He'll lay out what happened, tell me how it felt, tell me why he's wrestling with it, and then he asks the same question I've heard from so many men. Do you think I should bring this up with her? He's not looking for permission. He's looking for steadiness. He wants help sorting out whether he's reacting or responding. He wants to make sure he's not about to turn a small moment into a bigger one. He already knows the issue matters. He's coming to me because speaking it out loud feels like crossing a threshold, and he wants to be sure he's walking in with clarity rather than fear. This is where the framework I've developed starts to take shape. It's the foundation for becoming the husband you want to be, and it has three essential pieces. Awareness, noticing what's happening inside of you and inside the relationship. Action, taking the steps you know are needed. And accountability, having support before, during, and after the moment of truth. When a man only has awareness, he spins in his own thoughts. When he jumps into action without support, he often falls back onto old patterns. When he has accountability but no clarity, nothing actually changes. But when all three come together, something does change. He doesn't feel like he's walking blind. He doesn't feel like he's gambling with the relationship. He feels grounded enough to speak honestly without letting fear take the wheel. And this is where that Joseph Campbell line comes to mind. Now, Joseph Campbell was a writer and a scholar who spent his life studying stories, myths, and the way humans move through fear and transformation. He said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." It's not just poetic, it's practical. The conversation you're hesitant to have is often the doorway to the closeness you've been missing. What most men don't realize is that it's rarely the conversation itself that creates distance. It's the buildup, it's the tension, it's the quiet withdrawal, it's the pretending everything's fine when something inside you is asking to be acknowledged. So when a man asks me, should I bring this up? I already know what's underneath the question. He's tired of carrying it alone. He wants to be honest without hurting the relationship. He wants to step toward her, not away from her. And what I tell him is simple. It might feel uncomfortable. It might stir up some emotion. It might challenge both of you a little, but that's okay. Honesty isn't the thing that breaks connection. More often than not, it's the thing that brings you back to it. Most men stay quiet because they're afraid of what might happen if they speak up. And I don't mean fear in a dramatic or exaggerated sense. I mean the everyday kind of fear that lives inside moments where you want something to go well, but don't quite trust yourself to navigate it. For a lot of us, hard conversations weren't modeled as something that brought people closer. Maybe conflict meant yelling or shutting down or coldness that lasted for days. Maybe honesty was met with defensiveness or dismissal, or maybe you grew up in a home where nobody talked about anything real at all. Everything looked fine on the surface, but underneath, everyone walked around holding tension that never got named. When men enter adulthood with those same patterns in the background, it makes perfect sense that bringing something up, especially something vulnerable, feels risky. You're not just thinking about the topic itself, you're anticipating everything you've ever experienced in moments like this. Your nervous system remembers the blow-ups, the distance, the disappointment. Your body reacts before your mind even has time to analyze it. And so the mind starts negotiating with itself. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe she won't understand. Maybe this isn't the right moment. Maybe it'll work itself out if I just let it go. On the surface, that sounds logical. Underneath, what's really happening is fear. Fear of saying it wrong or making things worse, fear of being misunderstood, of her reacting in a way you weren't prepared for, or fear of being the one who started something. And the truth is, silence gives you a temporary sense of safety. It buys you a little space. It lets you avoid the moment for one more night or one more weekend. But what it also does, quietly and slowly, is create distance. You start tiptoeing around the topic in your own mind. You see her walk into the room and a small part of you remembers the thing you haven't said. It affects how open you feel. It affects your patience. It affects the softness in your tone. So silence isn't neutral. Another reason men stay silent is because they're not sure if their feelings are valid. They'll say things like, I don't want to make a big deal out of nothing, or I'm not even sure I have the right to bring this up. And what they really mean is, I don't really know how to say this without feeling like I'm messing it up. That's not because they lack courage, it's because they lack a roadmap. They were never shown how to speak from clarity instead of frustration. They were never taught how to bring something up without blame. They weren't taught how to hold their ground without turning rigid or defensive. So the idea of a hard conversation feels overwhelming, not because of what they want to say, but because they don't feel equipped for the moment they imagine happening on the other side of their words. And then there's this. Most men don't want to add stress. They don't want to trigger another argument. They don't want to be the source of her pain. So they carry things alone, thinking that protecting her from discomfort is the same thing as protecting the relationship. But that's not how love works. Love doesn't grow in avoidance. It grows in truth, even when the truth feels a little shaky coming out. When a man stays silent, it's rarely about the topic itself. It's about the story he carries about conflict, the fear he has about his own reactions, and the worry that opening the moment might lead to something he can't control. And if you've spent years aiming for peace at any cost, the idea of stirring up any amount of tension feels like failure, even when it's actually the doorway to connection. The reality is this. Silence is almost always a sign of underdeveloped relational confidence, not a lack of care. When men learn how to articulate what's happening inside of them in a grounded way, the fear doesn't disappear, but it stops being the thing that decides whether the conversation happens. And that's what we're moving toward in this episode. Not the absence of fear, just the ability to show up with enough steadiness to say what needs to be said without collapsing, attacking, or shutting down. Because you can't build the marriage you want if you're hiding the parts of yourself she needs to hear. One of the reasons hard conversations go sideways so quickly is because most men focus on what they want to say, but not how or when they're saying it. They work up the courage, feel the pressure building, and finally just try to get the words out. And by the time they do, the moment is already loaded with tension. Their heart rate is up, their chest is tight, the conversation comes out sharp or rushed or too intense, and everything tips off balance before it even begins. What I want you to hear is this: the success of a hard conversation starts long before the first word is spoken. There are 3 things that shape the entire moment. And when you understand them, the conversation itself becomes far easier to navigate. So let's start with timing. Most men wait until their internal pressure is high and then drop the conversation right in the middle of whatever is happening. Kids running around, the end of a long day, right before bed, or during something stressful. And when you do that, you're not setting the stage for connection. You're inviting her into a moment she didn't agree to and isn't prepared for. Timing isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about choosing one where the two of you have enough emotional bandwidth to stay steady, enough presence to actually hear each other, enough space for the conversation to breathe. Sometimes that means asking, hey, is now an okay time for something that might take a few minutes? Or when would be a good time for us to talk about something important to me? It's respectful, it's grounding, and it gives both of you a chance to show up well. Then there's tone. Tone isn't just your voice, it's the energy you bring in the moment. If you're already bracing for a reaction, she can feel it. If you're carrying frustration, the conversation will start from defensiveness instead of clarity. And if you've rehearsed the conversation a dozen times in your mind, your tone will usually carry the tension of all those imagined scenarios. Tone isn't about sounding calm. It's about being regulated well enough to speak from your heart instead of from your fear. It's choosing words that open the moment rather than words that push her away. It's saying, can I tell you what came up for me in that moment instead of, here's what you did. It's steady, not sharp. It's warm, not performative. It's honest, but grounded. When tone is right, she feels your intention before she hears your words. And finally, territory. Territory is the setting, the environment where the conversation happens, and it has more impact than men realize. Some spaces are too distracting. Some moments are too public. Some locations carry old emotional patterns that make it hard to stay open. If you've had years of difficult conversations in the kitchen, that room might already hold tension for her. If you bring something up in the car, she may feel trapped. If you try to talk in the middle of chores or chaos, neither of you can settle in. Territory is simply choosing a space where both of you can be present without feeling cornered or overloaded. Sometimes it's the dining table after dinner. Sometimes it's a quiet moment on the couch. Sometimes it's stepping outside for a walk together. The point isn't to create a perfect environment. The point is to create a supportive one, a place where the conversation can live without being swallowed up by everything happening around you. When timing, tone, and territory line up, the conversation changes completely. And you're creating a moment where both of you can stay connected, even if the topic is uncomfortable. And here's the thing. Hard conversations will always carry some level of tension. But when you set the conditions well, the tensions becomes workable. You're not fighting the environment and the topic at the same time. You're not trying to steady yourself while also managing hers. You're entering the conversation in a way that supports both of you, which makes it far easier to stay in the pocket when things get emotional. This is what steadiness looks like before the conversation even begins. And when you can do that, you give the two of you a real chance to actually hear each other. And before we go any further, I want to talk about something men ask me all the time. How do I actually start this conversation without making things worse? That's where we're heading next. Real quick, before we get back to the show, if you're like me and you're a busy husband with a lot on your plate, sometimes you hear something on this podcast, an idea or a specific practice or a suggestion, and you have every intention of doing the thing that you just heard. But life gets busy and sometimes you forget. Well, that's why I created the Better Husband Toolkit. This is a short, concise, downloadable cheat sheet with 3 of the most important relational skills I believe every husband should know and have in their tool belt in order to improve their marriage. If you're asking yourself, how can I be a better husband today? Go to betterhusbandtoolkit.com and download the short document. And if you have any questions, you can email me. I'd be happy to offer you some more support. Again, go to betterhusbandtoolkit.com or click the link in the show notes and get your toolkit today. Now back to the show. One of the most intimidating parts of a hard conversation is the beginning. Most men put so much pressure on themselves to start right that they either rush in too fast or avoid the moment altogether. And it makes sense. The beginning of a conversation feels like the moment with the most risk. You don't know how she'll respond, you don't know how the energy will shift, and you don't know if you're about to step into connection or conflict. But you don't need a perfect opening, you just need a steady one. A grounded beginning does 2 things at the same time. It lets her know something meaningful is coming, and it lets her feel that you're not bringing it with intensity or blame. You're signaling that I want this to go well before you ever talk about what this is. A good opening creates a frame, a kind of emotional boundary around the moment. It tells both of you, we're not doing this reactively, we're doing this intentionally. And that alone changes the entire tone of the conversation. Here are a few ways to begin, depending on the tone you want to set. Is now an okay time for something that might take a few minutes? This one is one of the cleanest openings you can use. It's respectful, it's grounding, it gives her autonomy, and it gives you both a chance to actually be present. You're not forcing the moment, you're creating space for it. Another option is, there's something I want to talk about, and I'm hoping we can do it without turning it into a fight. This opening lets her feel your intention immediately. You're already signaling care, which lowers her defenses before the topic even appears. And then there's this one. I've been thinking about something, and I want us to look at it together. This language is collaborative. It tells her you're not handing her a problem. You're inviting her into a conversation the 2 of you can navigate as a team. You don't have to use these exact sentences. What matters is the energy behind them. A good opening really only needs to do a few simple things. First, it helps you check whether the moment can actually hold the conversation. Hard topics land so much better when both of you have the emotional space to take them in. And when you ask, is now an okay time, you're already doing relational work. You're respecting her capacity and you're regulating your own at the same time. It also signals care. The way you begin lets her feel that you're not dropping something heavy on her out of nowhere. You're choosing to bring this to her gently, with intention, and that alone softens the moment because she can sense that you're trying to handle it well. And the last thing a good opening does is create shared ground. You're showing her that you're not coming in as 2 people on opposite sides. You're approaching this as partners, as a team, ready to look at something together. And you're saying, without saying it directly, I'm not trying to fight you on this. I'm here to work through it with you. Those 3 things, readiness, care, and shared ground, shape the energy of the entire conversation before the first real sentence even begins. And when you start this way, you're not just preparing her, you're preparing yourself. Most men don't realize how much steadiness comes from simply beginning slowly. When you ask for readiness, when you name your intention, when you take a breath before diving in, you regulate your own nervous system. You lower your own tension. You're not rushing, you're not bracing, you're arriving. And because you're arriving steadily, she can too. Once the moment is open, you don't need a dramatic transition. You don't need a speech or a perfect sentence. You just need to move gently into your truth, whether you're naming something that hurt, something that confused you, or something that's been on your mind. A grounded beginning gives both of you the best chance to staying connected when the conversation gets real. It's how you keep the moment from turning into a reaction, and it's what allows the rest of the conversation to unfold with honesty instead of fear. When you can start a conversation in this way, slowly, intentionally, and with care, you create the kind of space where truth can actually do its job, and that's what makes the whole thing work. In every hard conversation, there's a moment where something shifts. Maybe it's the way she responds, maybe it's a look on her face, maybe it's just the way your body reacts. You feel your chest tighten a little, or your breathing gets shallow, or your thoughts start speeding up. And right there, in that small internal shift, the whole conversation can take a turn. This is the moment most men struggle with because the reaction inside their body happens faster than they realize. 1 second they're in the conversation and the next second they're pulled into old patterns. They might get quieter than they mean to, or sharper than they want to, or just lose track of what they were trying to say. And it doesn't feel intentional, it just happens. The goal in that moment isn't to power through or pretend you're fine. It's to recognize what's happening early enough that you can stay present. Even a little awareness helps. If you feel your chest tighten or notice yourself mentally pulling back or sense that everything suddenly feels overwhelming, you just have to experience it. You have to be aware of it. You don't need to name it out loud. Just catching it internally gives you a little room to breathe. Once you've noticed it, slowing the moment down becomes possible. A single steady breath can make a surprising difference. Bringing your voice down just a touch or pausing before you respond can help your body realize that you're not in danger. You're simply in a vulnerable conversation with the person you love. Sometimes it helps to name that you're trying to stay steady. Something like, hold on a second, I can feel myself wanting to shut down and I don't want to do that. I just need a moment. And that's not exiting the conversation, and it's not avoiding the topic. It's you anchoring yourself so you can stay connected instead of reacting. A lot happens between two people in the middle of a difficult conversation. Your nervous system responds to hers, and hers responds to yours. And if you don't actively ground yourself, the conversation can turn into two people trying to manage their own fear instead of trying to understand each other. Staying present doesn't require you to stay calm the entire time. Calm isn't the goal. Connection is. Staying present simply means you're able to keep showing up honestly, even if you're feeling stretched or uncomfortable. It means you're listening to understand, not listening to defend. It means you're communicating from the part of you that cares about the relationship, not the part that wants the moment to be over. If something lands in a confusing or painful way, you're allowed to slow the moment down and ask for clarity instead of reacting. Something as simple as, I'm trying to understand what you meant by that. These moments, the messy middle ones, are where the real relational strength is built because they ask you to stay open when your instincts wants you to pull back. Every time you stay with the moment instead of shutting down or escalating, you're strengthening the connection between you. This week, pick one conversation you've been avoiding. Don't choose the heaviest thing in your marriage, just something real that you've been carrying on your own for a little too long. Naming it to yourself is the first move. It gives shape to the moment you're about to create. First, once you know what you want to talk about, set the conditions before you speak. Choose a moment where both of you actually have some emotional room. Approach her with a steady energy and ask if it's a good time. Next, when you're ready to begin, use one simple opening line. Something like, there's something I want to talk to you about and I'm hoping we can do it without turning into a fight. That's enough. All you're doing is opening a door and inviting her in. And lastly, when you're in the middle of a conversation and you notice your chest tightening or your mind speeding up, slow down just a little. Take one quiet breath, give yourself the space you need to stay present so you can finish the truth you came to say. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a moment to look inward. These conversations only really change your marriage when they start changing you, the way you think, the way you approach her, the way you show up inside the moments that matter. So take a breath, slow yourself down for a second, and sit with these reflection questions. Where in your marriage do you hold back from saying something real because you're worried about how it might land? When hard moments show up, what's the first instinct that takes over in you? If you brought forward the truth you've been avoiding, what do you imagine might shift between the two of you? Let these questions sit with you. Let them echo a little bit. They'll point you toward the next conversation you need to have and the man you're becoming inside of it. If there's one thing I want you to walk away with today, it's this. Hard conversations don't get easier by avoiding them. They get easier when you learn to enter them with intention, speak with care, and stay present long enough for something real to happen. Your steadiness is the invitation, your honesty is the bridge, and your willingness to stay in the moment is what turns tension into connection. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to show up with enough courage to let the truth be spoken. That's what creates the marriage you're wanting to build, one honest moment at a time. So if this episode spoke to you, if you're sitting with a conversation you know you need to have, or you're realizing how much support would help you stay steady in those moments, that's exactly what we do inside of Better Husband Academy. It's where you get the accountability piece of the work, the place to ask questions before a hard conversation, and the place to come back afterward to get grounded, reflect, and keep growing. If you want to learn more, go to betterhusbandacademy.com or just send me an email at angelo@angelosantiago.com. I'll drop the link in the show notes as well. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Better Husband. I'm Angelo Santiago, and I appreciate you being here and doing this work. These conversations matter, and the fact that you're leaning into them says a lot about the man you're becoming. Take what stood out to you today and put it into practice this week. Small, steady steps. That's what changes a marriage. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, I have a quick request. If you've ever gotten any value from the show and you want the show to continue to grow, to access bigger and more knowledgeable guests, and to keep providing you with more ways that you can be a better husband in your marriage, simply leave a rating and a review if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a few seconds, and those reviews go a long way in attracting more experts and bigger guests to the show. So if you're feeling up to it, as a favor to me, I'd love to see a rating and a review from you. Thank you so much for being a listener and all your support.